and Malfoy's guide to the metaphysics of immortality. I pity Slughorn's taste for teaching people with no future. Welcome. I trust you appreciate the atmosphere. It is important to appreciate where true power resides. Today, we discuss eternity, or rather, how not to disgrace your bloodline trying to achieve it. The fear of the void. Death, the one subject wizards pretend to understand while doing everything in their power to avoid it. Observe the riffraff, the Gryffindors, Pottah, who cling to sentimental notions, calling mortality the next great adventure. Pathetic, powerful wizards, the ones with true legacy like my family, understand that disappearing is an insult to the name. We don't fear the void, we find it crude. We seek sophistication over desperation when preserving our status. This Malfoy family tree, for example, marks those moments when our ancestors were deemed worthy enough to continue our line, an elegant tradition. The Dark Lord, by contrast, demands only servitude. Loyalty is measured in immediate usefulness, and failure is rewarded with pain. Malfoy's deal in eternity with refinement, not the barbaric tactics of the desperately weak. Speaking of desperation, the ghost, first, the lowest form of continued existence. The ghost, an utterly contemptible state. A ghost is merely the transparent, three-dimensional imprint of a departed soul left upon the earth. They are non-beings who chose a feeble imitation of life because they were too weak to move on. They are defined by their fear, guilt, regrets, or overt attachment to the material world. They cannot feel physical pleasure and retain the same dull, tedious outlook they had when they were living. They cannot answer the one question anyone asks because they chose an impoverished version of life instead. When you pass right through them, getting nothing more than an icy shower, that is their entire existence, a reminder that they were too incompetent to die properly. If you agree that becoming a translucent, weeping ghost is the weakest way to fail at death, comment below. Nearly Headless Nick. And speaking of incompetence, let's consider the resident Gryffindor joke, Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington. This man, a proclaimed pure-blood snob who boasts of noble blood, spends eternity defined by his greatest failure, his inability to be beheaded cleanly. His existence is a constant reminder that he was a less accomplished wizard than he believed in life. He retains old resentments about the executioner's blunder, constantly fighting against the fact that his head still clings to his neck by half an inch of skin and sinew. His quest for eternal identity is so shallow that he is still trying to qualify for the Headless Hunt, whose members require that heads must have parted company with their bodies. Nick condemned himself to exist forever as a joke, lacking even the competence required to die completely. Truly pathetic. If you find this analysis of pure blood legacy intriguing, like this video to show your support for true refinement. The limitations of ghosts. And here is where the ghost truly shows its pathetic limitations. A ghost is merely an imprint of a departed soul, a soulless remnant clinging to the mortal world. Consider nearly Headless Nick's embarrassing death day party. You saw the repulsive menu, didn't you? Rotted fish, maggoty haggis, and burned charcoal black cakes. A true showcase of their eternal failure. Why? Because ghosts cannot derive physical pleasure from anything. They attempt to taste the rotten food by passing through it, yet they gain nothing from this dreadful buffet. They are incapable of experiencing the pleasures of the living, be it eating, drinking, or any other true sensation. Furthermore, they cannot learn. They are stuck forever with the intellectual capacity they had the moment they chose not to move on. Their knowledge and outlook are permanently fixed at the level they had attained during life. Nick is cursed to be defined eternally by a botched execution and the shame of not being a proper member of the Headless Hunt. A ghost is not a noble immortal. It is a feeble simulacrum. The Bloody Baron. There is only one ghost here that merits even a shred of interest, and he is naturally a Slytherin, the Bloody Baron. The Baron is covered in indelible silver bloodstains. Unlike the pathetic Nick, who wails about losing half an inch of neck skin, the Baron is defined by deep, profound regret. He murdered the woman he loved, the Grey Lady, and was overcome by such remorse that he killed himself with the same weapon. The chains he clanks through the dungeons are proof of his penitence and his internal suffering. His authority is undisputed. He is the only person in the entire school capable of controlling Peeves, the poltergeist. Peeves, who causes havoc everywhere, is absolutely afraid of the Bloody Baron, a respect the Gryffindor ghost can only dream of inspiring. The Baron is one of the four-house ghosts, and therefore intrinsically linked to the history and foundation of the school, which is more than can be said for pathetic, attention-seeking Gryffindors. The portrait. Now, let's talk about true permanence. The portrait. Ancestral portraits, such as the ones lining these cold walls, are the proper way to achieve a legacy. A portrait is not a ghost. A ghost is a remnant of a soul, condemned to float about because of fear or regret. A portrait, conversely, is an enchanted piece of canvas. The degree to which a portrait can communicate and interact depends entirely on the power of the witch or wizard painted, not the skill of the artist. My distinguished forebears who are watching us right now behave exactly like their living subjects and repeat their favorite phrases, mimicking their general demeanor. For instance, Sirius's treacherous mother is utterly devoted to purity and hates all mudbloods and filth. This is a distillation of their personality. They are representations, not true living entities. However, the portraits of headmasters are far more significant than common portraits. Dumbledore's portrait, which is mere paint and memory, was meticulously stocked with useful recollections and knowledge to be shared with his successors. While those Gryffindors think my grandfather's portrait is just snoozing on the wall, it is entirely awake, listening, and flitting about to relay intelligence. Unlike ghosts, who possess limited knowledge, these portraits serve as a valuable library of reference for the headmaster of the day. It is sophistication over spectacle. Awakening a portrait. The true elegance of the portrait lies in its intentional permanence, not some miserable accident caused by fear. My ancestors didn't simply die and hope a bit of chilly magic stuck around. They prepared. Creating a truly interactive portrait is a calculated magical endeavor. The painter merely casts the enchantments to capture the subject's demeanor and favorite phrases. However, the degree to which that painted canvas can actually interact with the living world depends entirely on the power of the witch or wizard being painted. The real work is done by the subject himself before death. A person of status commissions their portrait and then spends dedicated time with it, regularly visiting the painting, sometimes keeping it locked away. They must meticulously teach the painted representation to act and behave exactly like themselves, ensuring that their memory and intelligence are correctly imparted to the work of art. This is preservation through skill and foresight, something far beyond the capabilities of a weeping, semi-corporeal spirit. The headmaster's portraits, and then we come to the most influential portraits, the former headmasters, watching us right now from their frames. They are hardly just silent, decorative wallpaper. Dumbledore, in particular, proved that these portraits are the perfect vehicle for manipulation, even when dead. A headmaster's portrait is stocked with meticulously preserved memories and knowledge that allow the painting to offer wisdom and advice to their successors. This provides an invaluable library of reference for the current headmaster, or, in Dumbledore's case, an entire resource for keeping watch over the school. Dumbledore was so calculating that he explicitly left specific information to his painted form, intending that it should be shared with future heads, allowing him to orchestrate events from beyond the grave. He knew exactly when to reveal crucial information, like instructing Snape's portrait to finally alert Harry that the Dark Lord was protecting the snake Horcrux. He even feigned exhaustion or sleep when visitors approached the office, pretending he wasn't awake and listening to everything going on in the room. Dumbledore ensured his portrait would remain an authority figure, always ready to dispense advice or directions. Sir Cadogan. Of course, sometimes the memory distillation goes wrong. I give you, as my primary evidence of portrait failure, that ludicrous buffoon, Sir Cadogan. This portrait, originally intended to provide security for Gryffindor Tower, is an exercise in insane bravery mixed with utter foolishness. He is constantly shouting challenges for jewels, tumbling off his fat pony, and behaving in a wildly unbalanced way, even in his painted form. He is supposedly one of the brave Gryffindors, yet he couldn't even keep the Gryffindor Tower secure when Sirius Black was loose. His legacy is defined by folly, a man who once allowed a dragonish creature to eat his horse, melt his sword, and snap his wand in half. That sort of foolhardiness is praised only by Gryffindors. He was even sacked from his duties guarding the entrance, having infuriated the entire school with his stupidly complex passwords. Honestly, talk about failing at the one job you were entrusted with. But then, you wouldn't expect more from someone whose defining moment was barely surviving a battle with a pony and a broken stick. The Horcrux. Horcrux, this is not a refined form of immortality. It is a barbaric act of self-mutilation. A Horcrux is widely considered the wickedest of magical inventions. It involves splitting your soul by committing murder, the supreme act of evil. You tear away a piece of yourself, condemning that fragment to exist outside your body, anchored within an object. This is an act of violation, entirely against nature. The irony is that while the wizard gains a feeble, miserable half-life, the process makes the remaining soul unstable and mutilated. It is desperation made physical. The Dark Lord clung to this practice because he feared death as a shameful human weakness. He embraced this path of profound magical degradation, demonstrating his utter disregard for both human and magical laws. This pathetic scramble for permanence is why my father always preferred demonstrating the Malfoy name and its inherited status over such monstrous tactics. Since depending on crude magic like Horcruxes is clearly inferior, subscribe now to learn how true wizards ensure their legacy lasts. The price of the Horcrux. The creation of a Horcrux is a barbaric act of splitting the soul, tearing it apart by murder. This process is entirely against nature, and the results speak for themselves. The remaining soul of the creator is left utterly maimed and diminished. This desperation comes with a terrible price: physical degradation. My father would confirm that true power should not leave you looking grotesque. Yet, the Dark Lord's face, after tearing his soul, became something barely recognizable. His features looked burned and blurred, waxy and oddly distorted. His spirit was reduced to something less than a ghost. He has the face of a skull, snake-like features, slit nostrils, and hands like large, pale spiders. This entire miserable condition, a soul mutilated beyond usual evil, is proof that his search for permanence was born of sheer cowardice, not brilliant magical calculation. The Resurrection Stone. The Resurrection Stone, the second of the three fabled Hallows, is another classic failure of metaphysics rooted in human sentimentality. Magic cannot truly raise the dead. The forms brought back by the stone are merely pale imitations and ghostly shadows. The supposed loved ones return sad, cold, and separated from the world of the living, forced to suffer because they do not belong here. The entire idea is designed only to torment the grief-stricken, or in the case of the original owner, the weak-willed Peverell brother, who possessed the stone. He became so distraught by the hopeless longing for the shadow of the girl he had recalled that he killed himself just to join her. Imagine the failure. An object designed for mastery over death drives you to embrace it. It is the ultimate statement on the futility of sentimental magic. Inferi. And what of the animated dead? The inferius plural, Inferi, is nothing but a puppet, a corpse reanimated by a dark wizard's curse. These beings have no will or brain of their own, and certainly cannot think their way out of unforeseen trouble. They are just tools, animated by complex spells. The Dark Lord used them extensively during his rise, supplying his army by murdering vagrant, homeless muggles. They are merely preserved dead flesh, distinguishable by their white, cloudy eyes. This is not true resurrection or immortality. It is cheap conjuring tricks, utilizing foul remains. Furthermore, they are easily nullified. Inferi are incapable of fighting fire, as fire is the only thing that can destroy them. To rely on such an easily defeated puppet army is utterly lacking in foresight. the Flamels, and the Elixir of life. Finally, we turn to the Philosopher's Stone, which produces the Elixir of life. This truly grants immortality, so long as the elixir is drunk regularly. The only known maker, Nicholas Flamel, was 666 years old, and his wife 658. This is pure, refined alchemy, a demonstration of great talent. Yet, this path has its flaws too. The Dark Lord scorned it because it breeds dependency, as the wizard must rely entirely on the indefinite supply of the elixir, which conflicts with his desire to operate alone. Even the Flamels themselves eventually grew weary of their long lives. When the stone was destroyed, they agreed it was all for the best, viewing death simply as the next great adventure. To have achieved such power only to surrender it proves that ultimate victory is not merely achieving eternal life, but desiring it when you finally possess it. The veil in the Department of Mysteries. Now, we move beyond the common, pitiful efforts at eternal existence, the ghost, the Inferius, and consider where the truly great mysteries of death are held. Deep within the Department of Mysteries lies the answer to the oblivion that terrifies most of you. This department is so secretive that it is entirely separate from the mundane bureaucracy of the other departments. It contains a room that is kept locked at all times, holding the very mystery of death itself. The room is sunken like an amphitheatre, surrounded by stone benches. In the centre, on a raised dais, sits an ancient, cracked, crumbling stone archway. This archway is draped with a tattered black veil or curtain that flutters and sways slightly, despite the complete stillness of the air. Foolish sentimentalists, like the wretched Pottah, felt a very strong inclination to climb up on the dais and walk through. This archway, housed in what is often called the death chamber, is the physical barrier between this pathetic world and the one that lies beyond. It is where unspeakables study death itself. It is the boundary that costs Gryffindors their lives. It is the only place in the Ministry of Magic that holds true, terrifying philosophical weight, because it confirms that death is not just an end, it is an active, unknown place. Of course, the veil offers no path to immortality, only the finality that cowards try so desperately to avoid. Priori Incantatem. Some claim that the dead return to give advice, a truly nonsensical idea worthy of a sobbing Hufflepuff. But we saw a brief, fascinating glimpse of this kind of resurrection during the Dark Lord's return, and it proved that the dead are nothing more than magical debris. When Potter dueled the Dark Lord in that miserable graveyard, their wands locked. Why? Because both wands contained a feather from the same tedious bird, Dumbledore's phoenix, Fawkes. This caused the reverse spell effect, or Priori Incantatem. This phenomenon does not revive the dead. It merely causes shadows or echoes of the victims, last murdered by that wand to appear. These spectres, including the shadow of Potter's father, were mere vestiges. They retained the appearance and character of the deceased, but were not alive. Dumbledore later confirmed that no spell can reawaken the dead. This is nothing more than a temporary discharge of magical residue from the wand's core, which temporarily manifests the last murders the wand performed. These echoes are proof that when the dead depart, only a pathetic stain of their power remains, hardly the glorious return preferred by ambitious purebloods. Is it? Professor Binns. If ghosts represent regret, then Professor Binns represents utter, contemptible failure. He is the single ghost teacher at Hogwarts. He was so utterly engrossed in his worthless material that he died in his sleep one day in front of the staff room fire and simply got up the next morning to teach, leaving his body behind him. The rumour, which I wholly believe, is that he literally hasn't noticed he is dead. His continued existence as a ghost is confined entirely to teaching the dullest subject on the schedule, history of magic. He lectures in a flat drone like an old vacuum cleaner and is only dimly aware that his classroom is full of students, often looking amazed when they attempt to ask him questions. He condemns himself to eternal monotony, plodding on endlessly about goblin rebellions and getting Emeric the evil and Uric the oddball mixed up. A ghost's knowledge and outlook remain at the level it was attained during life. Therefore, Binns remains eternally trapped in a state of utter, overwhelming mediocrity, incapable of learning, evolving, or even noticing that he exists neither here nor there. He is proof that eternal life without ambition is worse than oblivion. Peeves. Peeves, the flying irritant, often confuses the sentimental, but he is easily classified. He is not, strictly speaking, a ghost at all. Peeves is classified as an invisible entity that causes audible and kinetic disturbances, generating pure chaos. He is one of those strange non-beings that populates the magical world, neither here nor there. He is simply the manifestation of mischief, a chaotic blend of low humor and malice. Peeves is incurably disruptive. He enjoys dropping objects on heads, pulling rugs, pelting students with chalk, and yelling students out of bed. At midnight, he has been the pet peeve of every caretaker since the founders, with even Filch constantly trying and failing to have him thrown out of the castle. While most teachers are powerless against him, his true weakness is far more entertaining. He is certainly afraid of the Bloody Baron, the ghost of Slytherin House. The poltergeist, this manifestation of disorder and low-class practical jokes, only bows to the raw, silver-stained menace of a superior Slytherin authority. He is an airborne menace, but he is nothing without his ability to cause chaos, which we, as sophisticated purebloods, detest. The Malfoy Preference. Now, the truly civilized method of self-preservation, the Malfoy way if you will, is the portrait. This method is clean, dignified, and ensures that the legacy remains impeccable. A magical portrait is a work of art that can talk and move around from picture to picture, behaving like its subject. However, understand this, these are not clumsy, transparent ghosts who chose a feeble half-life. A portrait is merely a two-dimensional representation of the living subject, as seen by the artist. They imitate favorite phrases and the general demeanor. They are not living or thinking entities. They are a controlled distillation of the real person. For powerful families, this is perfect. We are not interested in preserving the whole, messy, inconvenient truth of existence, especially not the greyish tinge to the skin or the dark shadows under the eyes that result from a miserable year under the Dark Lord's command. No, a great man, such as a future minister of magic or merely a wealthy pure blood exerting influence from behind the scenes, must ensure his image is preserved at his best. The Malfoys are known for self-preservation and maintaining their inherited status. We demand that our portrait is painted early, when the subject is still young, confident, and powerful. Our ancestors can then be installed in austere studies like this one, and after years spent teaching the canvas their memories and cunning, are ready to advise future generations, as the headmasters do for their successors. It is preservation without the tedious inconvenience of actual life. It is the height of pure blood control. Theoretical true immortality. So, does the mythical true immortality exist? Or is death the only certainty? For the desperate, there is always the philosopher's stone, which offers the elixir of life. This potion extends life, promising eternal youth. However, this demands perpetual dependence. The drinker must consume it regularly forever to maintain immortality. A true wizard, like the Dark Lord who valued operating alone, would find such dependence intolerable. Then, there are the terrifying secret solutions, favored by psychopaths who despise the shameful human weakness of death. The Dark Lord went further than anybody along the path that leads to immortality. By committing murder, one rips the soul apart, splitting it against nature. The torn fragment is encased in an object, a Horcrux, so that if the body is destroyed, one cannot die. But what remains? A spectral existence, less than spirit, less than the meanest ghost. The soul is mutilated beyond usual, evil, diminished, and maimed. The pursuit of absolute eternal life leads inevitably to madness, as with the Dark Lord, or degradation, as with the ghost. This leaves only Dumbledore's nauseating sentiment that death is the next great adventure, a comforting lie for the weak. For a Malfoy, it is simply the moment one's influence is truly tested. So you see, whether through fear, weakness, or outright genetic failure, embracing oblivion is a choice the truly ambitious refuse to make. They simply fail to find a lasting solution, whether it is through transparent fear, pathetic quick spell, or Umbridge's brand of elaborate, self-delusional lies. You may now retreat. I tire of discussing the existential failures of the masses. These desperate attempts at eternal life are proof of failure. To see another prime example, watch A Malfoy's Guide to Dark Lords and Their Failures next.